Hey guys, it's Ling. Today I want to talk about translucent clay. As you can see, I have 4 different translucent clay, and those are the brands that are easy to find in the US. I remember being so confused when I wanted to purchase translucent clay the first time, so I want to compare them for you. I also want to talk about different ways of using translucent clay, but to avoid the video from being too long, I will be making a part 2 translucent clay video to talk about that. The first 2 are both Premo clay, but one is called translucent while the other is called white translucent. When I was a beginner, I had such a hard time choosing between the 2. If you're wondering, translucent was the winner, but now it's time for me to see the differences between the 2. The next one is translucent by Sculpey III, which is usually 50 cents cheaper than the other ones that I have here. And finally, we have translucent by Fimo. And as a bonus, I also have this color. This color is called Opal. It has glitters in it, but I think it has a translucent base. I am interested in this because the glitters are not the ones that you usually see, so these glitters are in irregular shapes. Here is a list of the contents of this video. Let's start with the Premo translucent. This clay is actually very hard right after you take it out of the bag, which makes it really hard to condition. I actually think it's a good thing though, because after you condition it well, it becomes really easy to work with. A lot easier than some other clay that is soft to begin with. And here, as you can see, I have to eventually break it up into smaller pieces to condition it piece by piece. And very often I have to use liquid translucent clay to help me condition it. Next, white translucent. As expected, this one is very similar to the first one. For some reason, I do feel that white translucent is a little bit softer than the translucent. It's not too soft though, so it's still very easy to work with after you condition it well. The production dates are both in 2017, so the softer texture is not due to the production dates. Moving on to Sculpey III. Honestly, I don't have high hopes for this one, because I just don't really like Sculpey III clay in general. They are usually just too soft to work with. And just like all the other Sculpey III clay, this one is really soft and really easy to condition. And it starts sticking to my hands really quickly, which makes it really hard to work with. But this soft clay actually does come in handy if you try to build a large piece without much details. I actually used this clay in my Cinderella's Castle video, which was posted a couple of weeks ago, but was actually filmed after this video. And now, translucent by Fimo. How do I open this package again? I don't really... Oh! The weird thing is, translucent by Fimo is not packaged the same way as all the other Fimo clay. Okay, so I finally managed to open the package. And the Fimo clay actually is even harder to condition than the Premo. But after you condition it, just like Premo clay, it does hold its shape very well and it does not stick to your fingers. For the colors, just by looking at them, you can probably tell that the Fimo clay is whiter than the other ones, which makes it seem less translucent than the other three. The Sculpey III is not as white as the Fimo, but it doesn't look as translucent as the Premo ones either. The Premo translucent and the Premo white translucent are pretty similar, but the one on the right does seem a little bit whiter, which makes sense because that's the white translucent. Next, let's look at the colors after baking. I'm using popsicle sticks to make sure that all the pieces have the same thickness. I then used my clay cutter to cut out identical pieces. I'm cutting out many pieces here because I want to save some for the next part of this video. According to the package instruction, I should bake the Premo clay in 275 degrees for 30 minutes per quarter inch. Because my clay pieces are so thin, I don't want them to get burned, so I decided to use 275 degrees, but to only bake them for 1 to 1.5 minutes. On the Sculpey III package, the temperature is the same, but the baking time is reduced in half. So I will only bake the Sculpey III clay for about 45 seconds. For the Fimo clay, the temperature is reduced to 230 degrees, but the time should be the same as the Premo clay, which is 1 to 1.5 minutes. So this is what they look like after baking. Sculpey III actually becomes really yellow, and the Fimo is still whiter than the other ones. This part is for you to see how transparent they are on their own. I don't really care about this part myself because I rarely use translucent clay on their own without mixing in another color or some glitters or some chalk pastel. But if you are wondering, this is how transparent they are on their own. The first two are somewhat transparent. The Sculpey III is not really transparent at all, and the Fimo is somewhere in between. In terms of the quality after baking, I have never had problems with clay breaking apart, unless when it is my fault, like when I don't blend the two pieces together very well, which has nothing to do with the quality of the clay. And as you can see here, the qualities are great. The Premo clay does tend to have cracks after baking if you don't condition it well, so I usually use translucent liquid clay to help with conditioning. And just in general, I feel that the Sculpey III clay is kind of easy to get burned, so just be careful with your bake time and temperature. The Fimo clay, as you can see here, is more flexible than the other three. It's probably due to the lower baking temperature. I forgot to bake the opal color, and here it is. So after baking, the color is actually very pretty. The base color seems to be exactly the same as the other two Premo translucent clay. For this part, we're also going to include the opal color, which was the color with translucent base and glitters. I decided to use red because it is easy to see when red changes color. Like if the translucent clay is too white, the red would become pink, or if the clay is too yellow, the red would become orange. So with each type of translucent clay, we are doing a 2:1 ratio, 1:1 ratio, 1:2, 1:4, and 1:8. And I just want to mention that it actually took me forever to finish mixing all the pieces. Okay, oh my god, finally! Alright. This is a piece of original red colored clay with no translucent clay mixed in. The red stays really true to the color when mixed with all three types of Premo. On the 1:8 ratio, the red still looks red, except it looks a little bit more translucent. With the 1:4 ratio, you can barely see the color change. No visible color changes with all the other ratios. With the Sculpey III and the Fimo, it is quite disappointing. The colors started turning pink already with the 1:2 and the 1:4 ratio. With the 1:8 ratio, the colors just look really pink. Remember though, this is before baking. I almost gave up on the Sculpey III and the Fimo, but I then decided to bake them and see what happens. And OMG, look at that. So after baking, you don't really see that pinkness anymore. So it's like the whiteness in the clay just disappears, just becomes translucent, right? So that's why you don't see the pink anymore, you're only seeing the red. So wow, so after baking, I am actually pretty happy with all the colors. So yeah. And just for your reference, this is a piece of clay that's with the 1:8 ratio, so it looks pretty pink, but as you can see, after baking, the pinkness actually disappeared. So overall, all different types of clay actually appear to be really translucent after baking. The only problem with the Fimo and the Sculpey III that I can think of is, say, if you have some leftover clay and the next time when you want to use it again, the color you see might be misleading. Overall, the Premo translucent is not very easy to condition. But once it softens, it becomes very easy to work with. It holds its shape very well, and it's not sticky at all. It is somewhat transparent on its own, and it stays strong after baking. When mixed with another color, the other color stays true to the color before and after baking. Remember that you need to condition it very well, possibly with liquid translucent clay to avoid cracking after baking. It is a perfect candidate when you want to make small but detailed creations. The Premo White Translucent is just like Premo Translucent, except it is slightly softer, which makes it slightly easier to condition, and it is also slightly whiter. And those are the reasons why Premo White Translucent is my favorite of them all. The Sculpey III Translucent is very soft, which makes it easy to condition, but it becomes too soft and very sticky very fast. When baked on its own, the color becomes very yellow and is not very transparent. After baking, it is pretty strong. When mixed with another color, the other color does not stay true to the color before baking, but after baking, the true color will come back. You have to be extra careful with this clay to avoid burning. This clay is my least favorite of them all, but the softness of the clay actually makes it a perfect candidate for larger projects. The Fimo translucent clay is very hard to condition, even harder than the Premo, but after it softens, it is not sticky. The color stays white and becomes somewhat transparent when baked along. After baking, the clay is strong and flexible. When mixed with another color, the other color does not stay true to the color before baking, but after baking, the true color will come back. Because of the hardness of this clay, I actually prefer Premo over this. If you prefer translucent but white base, especially when mixing with glitters, the Fimo translucent is a very good choice. The Premo opal color is just like the other two Premo clay, except it has glitters. So if you want opal colored glitters, of course this is the one to go for. Alright, that's it. So if you guys found today's video helpful, please give me a thumbs up. Feel free to check out some of my other videos, such as this one, or this one. Subscribe to my channel so you won't miss Translucent Clay Part 2 video, or any other upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, see you next time, bye bye!